I've got Bomber's script. So what we're going to do is host New Zealand's best and greatest weekly podcast that's not funded by New Zealand On Air for one night, because we've put together the greatest political panel in New Zealand broadcasting history. From the Maritime Union of New Zealand, let's say welcome to Carl Findlay. Carl, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Spokesperson for infrastructure from Labour, it's Tangi Utikere. Welcome, sir.
Pat, Chewie, good to be back.
And from the Council of Trade Unions, economist Craig Renney. Look at us! This is the first time we've done a fiver. All right, gentlemen, we want to get into this. Viewers of this show know that this has been a bone that we've refused to let go of since they got cancelled. Obviously, nothing's changed tonight, but maybe what we could and should do is start off with the one. There's two One News stories, and I've actually got clips from the actual press conference. I don't know how much we'll play, but maybe what would be sensible is just to start off by playing the One News story, the first story, just in case someone's living under a rock and they've just crawled out at 9:15 and they don't know what's going on. So let's just do that first, and then we'll get to it. We'll let the dragons free.
Much awaited plans for the new Cook Strait ferries finally unveiled today, but it'll be a much longer wait until we see them actually set sail. And a lot of details been left floating. As announced last year, the IREX project's so-called Ferrari ferries planned by the last government at a cost of $551 million sunk, and confirmed today, replaced by two smaller ones. But the government won't say how much the new ferry plan will cost, and it revealed it'll still consider alternative proposals from the private sector. A new Crown-owned company will be set up to take charge of buying the new ferries, expected to start operating in...
Even that will be set up. Why isn't it fucking set up already? Will be. Everything's will be. They haven't even set the company up. Will be set up. What's going on?
2029. In charge of the project, Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters, who's been given a new role, Minister for Rail.
And I'm sorry, I know that we'll all know what this term is, but does anyone remember the term baubles of office? I will not take the baubles of office. He seems to have changed his tune quite drastically on rail-enabled ferries. Just happens to coincide with a new bauble being offered to the man.
Our coverage begins with One News reporter Jessica Roden in Picton with reaction.
1 year ago exactly, Cabinet axed the mega ferries project with no plan B in place. And big news today, there's still no firm plan.
But what I can do today is look at all of you and commit that no matter what, we will be procuring two ferries that will ensure a safe and reliable ferry service. We will be doing that.
So we haven't done it yet. We will. It's coming in the
future. 12 months.
This is the announcement that somewhere in the future we will make another announcement about the ferries, and we promise that those ferries will be bought, and we'll tell you about them in the future announcement.
For less than the cost of Project IREX.
Inter-Islander has 3 ferries now, all approaching 30 years old. The government saying, trust us, there will be new ships before they retire.
We still have more to learn, there's no doubt about that, but I think we're starting to understand the pathway forward.
Sorry.
Watching today's development closely was Kitty Fitton.
You couldn't make it up, could you?
She and her 5 children were on board the Kaitaki last year when it lost power.
I am pretty horrified because I have no idea how the infrastructure is already creaking at the seams. We already know that it's not working.
The old plan would have seen the first mega ferry arrive in 2026. The new plan is for replacements to be operating by 2029.
Right now we've got another 15 trucks crossing over tonight that we want to make sure that we've got a reliable crossing. So we want some immediate solutions to the reliability of the Cook Strait. 5 years away for something to happen is still a very long time.
Experts have recommended the ships shouldn't be rail-enabled, which means freight would be transferred on.
Well, we'll talk about this, but what expert would be recommending that? We'll look at that. Like, experts are recommending a worse service for rail in New Zealand. I don't get that, but you guys are going to be the experts. We'll come to you in a sec.
But ministers are keeping the door open about that. They've also had advice the new ferries should be 200 metres in length, only slightly longer than what we already have. That means less additional portside infrastructure is required, but upgrades still essential. The wharf behind me was due to be demolished under IREX, and while it's had its life extended, it needs to be replaced in the next 5 years. The issue is that until we know which ferries will be using facilities like this, upgrades can't begin. And the ports have been told they'll have to foot more of the bill.
We need to look at the business case, and we need to understand the proposition that's being put to us, what we're going to have to design and provide, and how that's going to be paid for.
For those answers, the minister's saying, bear with us, we'll get back to you in March.
Good one.
Until then,
We've got absolutely no choice but to use this dilapidated, outdated equipment that, quite frankly, almost killed us.
Jessica Roden, One News.
Right, there's the first story, gentlemen. I think probably Carl, Maritime Union of New Zealand, someone who's working with the people who are actually working with the ferries. You're probably the first and best to give us a heads up. What are your initial thoughts, reactions, anything you want, Carl? Throw it out there.
Yeah, well, what can you say? Shocking. It's hard to believe these people. The finance minister is the finance minister. 12 months later, and we'll still none the wiser in what they're doing. But the real problem here, where we're concerned, is what about the crew? What about all the people working on those? Not just the 3 vessels of the Inter Islander, but the other 2. They're at the end of their life as well. And these guys go out and carry out their work day in, day out, professionally, doing the best they can. Their anxiety levels are through the roof. And these people are supposed to be in business, making all the big business decisions, can't even get this right or up and running, or give these guys any sort of sense of a future. It's just disgraceful, really, how they're treating the people of New Zealand.
Hey, Carl. The television news item showed obviously a customer who had a situation where she was stuck on the ferry. She found it very dangerous. What do the workers on the ferries think about the current stock and the safety of them?
Well, again, they're just very concerned. They go to work every day to do their best under the circumstances, because they need to put food on the table. But they're looking over their shoulders, wondering what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. And now that's been extended. What, another IREX is supposed to come online in 2026, and now they've got to wait another 4 or 5 years if they make a decision in March. So again, yes, just terrible. And I might say too, I might add that disgraceful. Today, Nicola Willis did look like she couldn't wait to pass the ball to Winston. She just couldn't wait to get rid of that. And Winston will fix it, So, and Luxon, what did Luxon say today, or sometime in the week, that she's the best finance minister ever? This would be one of the biggest clangers in political history in New Zealand, or in the top 3 at the very least, and they can't get away with it.
Tangi, as a infrastructure spokesperson for Labour, what are your thoughts about today?
Yeah, with transport. But look, it is, I think Carl is right, it's an absolute disgrace to hear and watch that press conference today. It's been a year and we've all been waiting. And what we got today were a couple of things, actually. One was an announcement from Nicola Willis that basically means nothing, because many of us were actually waiting to hear, well, what is the size of these new vessels? How much will they cost? Who will be building them? Not to actually have an announcement that a new company is going to be formed to basically do the work that we all thought was being done over the last 12 months. And second thing is, which I found utterly distasteful, was Nicola Willis basically saying, I have delivered.
Yeah.
Well, what she has delivered is basically a blank sheet of paper. And I do feel, actually, for the hardworking staff who are on the vessels and around the vessels, as Carl has alluded to, because it actually is just really signalling to them from this government and from Nicola Willis that she actually doesn't care. She's sort of, well, that's it, I'm moving on. And it also shows that Christopher Luxon clearly doesn't have any confidence in Nicola Willis, because he has removed her from this and has handed it over to Winston.
Interesting as well that Mr. Luxon wasn't at the press stand-up today. He kind of threw them both to it and was like, oh, this has nothing to do with me. He's off doing other things. Yeah,
he's certainly wanting to distance himself from this lack of decision that's been taken by the government. I mean, the other thing, of course, is that the government parties themselves, I don't think, are talking to each other. We've got David Seymour saying stuff that the new Minister of Rail is now saying, well, that's not very helpful, making comments like that, an hour after the comments were made. It is just an absolute form of chaos that's going on over there.
Craig, you kind of bring in both the the union and the representing the people, but also the economists' perspective on this. I got told by someone that your Blue Sky account was going off today. Is that right? Tell us your initial thoughts after today's non-announcement.
Well, I mean, today we had no plan. We've got no idea. We've still got no ferries. We've got no idea where the replacement ferries are coming from. We've got no idea how much they're going to cost. We've got no idea who's going to pay for them. We've got no idea how the port infrastructure is going to be delivered. We don't know what the impact is on the economy. We don't know what the impact is on the government books. We've had a year and we're essentially no further forward than we were when the Minister of Finance cancelled the project. But lest anyone thinks this is sort of just a one-off, it's just, it's a couple of ferries, who cares? The Cook Strait ferries carry $15 billion of freight every year, right? And the ferries, according to reputable studies, contribute about $3.3 billion in value to the economy. They deliver thousands of jobs. And every Kiwi is a user of the Cook Strait ferry service.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone consumes food grown on the South Island or goods from the North Island used on the South Island. So everyone uses that service. And as a consequence, the decision we've had today is going to put more costs on Kiwi households. Can you remember that laser-like focus on the cost of living? This is just put the cost of living on. Can you remember that decision where we were going to be, getting the country back on track? We are literally taking the tracks off the ferries. We've just spent millions of dollars helping to refurbish Hillside, and we should have. And this sort of announcement puts Hillside and South Island Rail really at jeopardy. So there's a whole bunch of reasons today that the kind of non-announcement really matters. And the fact that we don't have any further way ahead, what we have was an announcement that we have a focus group to have an announcement in the future.
Chewie, I'm going to grab you in a sec, but before, just about the whole rail, this was part of the stand-up. I watched the whole thing. I watched it twice, in fact, so then you definitely don't have to, Whānau. This is only 11 seconds, well, not even that actually, where Nikki Noboats says whatever the solution, it's like whatever amorphous unknown entity out there, rail freight will still get across the strait. Here, I'll let her say it in her own words that I've just quoted exactly.
Whatever the preferred solution, rail freight will continue to be able to be transported between the North and South Islands.
Now, of course, it doesn't need to be rail-enabled ferries for that, and they danced around that quite a lot on the announcement. They did answer some straight questions as well, because what they're basically able to do is go, well, we don't know what it's going to be. We're working that out now. Will they be rail-enabled? They might be. Will they not be? They call it bridging, don't they? It might be. So they're actually not answering anything. Chewie, questions or comments?
I think you've missed what Nicola's talking about there. Like, yeah, she didn't particularly spell it out well, but I think what she's implying there is that you're going to build a rail-enabled ramp, and we're going to get the trains going really fast, and we're just going to yeet the freight across, because that's the same. This whole thing has been bizarre, okay? Because it's all stuff all of us, were talking about 12 months ago. When she was talking about the second-hand Corolla, people immediately went, I wonder how many ferries are suitable for New Zealand are available. And I think the number was 24, and none of them were available for sale.
Correct.
So straight away there, within days of her making that second-hand Corolla remark, people were like, that's not going to work. We're going to need to buy new boats. And so here we are, 12 months later, and it seems she might have realised that we've got new boats, but we still don't have any sort of, if she had found a shipyard that would trust the New Zealand government, she would have been talking about it now. If she'd been able to go to Hyundai, cap in hand, and go, actually, we fucked up, maybe we can keep going, maybe a little bit smaller, she would have been crying about it. This is 12 months of incompetence. It's 12 months of inaction from a government that says that they're laser focused on all these things that matter to Kiwis, laser focused on the cost of living, laser focused on working really hard for the average Kiwi. They've been working really hard on fuck all. And I don't understand why this is like, we've still got media just repeating, not just throwing it at their feet and go, what the fuck is this? They're just repeating the handouts. They're not going to Simeon Brown. Look, you've got this massive transport budget. What the fuck is it doing? You reckon increasing a speed limit 10 kilometers an hour on a strip of motorway is going to unlock the productivity innately in the New Zealand highway system? And then you're going to piss that away because when the truck finally gets to the port, we've got to double handle all the freight on both sides? There's costs to that. You're going to cut the portside infrastructure out of the project to make it seem cheaper. You're then going to load it onto local councils that own the ports. It's ridiculous. And you're going to give us ships that are supposed to last 30 years that are only marginally bigger than the ships we bought 30 years ago. So you're saying that there's no growth in this country in population and freight handling in 60 years? That's stunning.
I think
these guys have no long-term mind at all. Anytime, like the next time you're talking to someone and they go, I voted for National because they're the guys that get things done and they're the only ones that can handle the economy, you load them into a trebuchet and you fire them into the fucking sun. Just shout at them for 40 minutes until they give up. That's the rule now.
I think we get it. I think Chewie's angry. I think the subtle vibe underlying
just clip that one bit.
Chewie's angry. I want to come back to you, Carl, because it seems like for a long time, Winston Peters has been spoken of as sort of a friend of rail and someone who's been saving it and trying to get it there. I'm just going to play a little clip from the stand-up today. He's just spent 2 minutes before this part of the conversation avoiding the question of rail on, rail off, wouldn't answer it. And so then he got asked, but is it your preference for rail on, rail off, as opposed to bridging? And this was his response.
But your preference is for rail-enabled ferries, is that correct?
We're looking at all the options, as I said, going forward.
Is two going to be enough?
For not having rail-enabled ferries, Mr. Peters.
Say?
Will you, Winston Peters, agree to buy ferries that are not...
Well, actually, look, I've been reading your articles and also watching on TV all your forecasts.
This is where he'll attack the media.
That person needs to be admonished. He's got it all wrong, hasn't he?
Is two ferries going to be enough at the moment?
You're for rail, you're setting up a 4A company. You won't confirm the 900 million. What's wrong?
Well, I won't confirm the 900 million because it's dribble, that's why.
Is two ferries going to be enough at the moment?
Carl, how are the people responding? How are your members responding, and particularly to Winston Peters, if anything? Or what else would you like to add to this conversation?
Well, all I would say there is, I guess, Winston understands rail probably better than Nicola and Luxon and all them. And he's come out publicly, I believe, and said he doesn't, he said to his party that they want rail-enabled ferries. So I don't know how he's going to get around that one and look them in the face if he turns tail on that. So I guess, we just have to fucking see where it leads us into the next few months. All I know is that we're working hard trying to get in to have a meeting with him. We don't think he's got a solid plan, so we want to try and get in there and help him with that solid plan and push him in the right direction.
Have you been spoken to in the last 12 months at all, or very much?
We had a couple of meetings with Shane Jones. And we talked about coastal shipping and the ferries. So we have had some contact, yeah.
And what about the Maritime Union in general? Like, if you could wave your magic wand and get exactly what you want for the ferries, what would it be?
Rail-enabled ferries, mate. Like Chewie pointed out, go back cap in hand, because they still haven't sorted out the break fee, which is a bit strange. Still a bit strange. I don't know. Everyone's sort of saying that the deal's off, but they still haven't sorted out that break fee. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Craig might have a better idea, but so whilst that's still on, if they could possibly go back, and Winston might be the guy that they have a bit more faith in than Nicola. Who knows? I know I'm reaching out for a bit of hope here, maybe being a bit naive, but just fucking sorry I'm swearing now, but just want a bloody result, and some certainty for the people running around on that stretch of water every bloody day, putting their lives in danger.
Yeah, and obviously everybody, the customers that use it and the people who run it, that's what we want for everybody. Tangi, you sit opposite the Minister for Rail. I guess every day you're in the House. He's been given his new bauble. What do you think about him? Well, I wouldn't say he's quite running away from rail-enabled, but certainly he won't commit to rail-enabled, will he?
No, he won't. And if we step back and listen to the rhetoric that's been used by the government, we've heard this week from the Prime Minister saying, well, they will be rail compatible, which basically means not rail enabled. And Carl will tell you that. So if they're not going to be rail enabled, then they're using the rhetoric of rail compatible. I think we know where, unfortunately, that is going to head. But look, we've been very clear that the solution does need to be rail enabled. Like, that is the only way that the main trunk line between the North and South Island is not going to be severed. We've had investments down the South Island. We have jobs at risk down further deep south and along that main trunk line as well. If there is no rail enablement, not only is it going to add additional costs to the consumer because of the freight that's going to be basically have to be double handled, but it's just going to shut down the productivity in the south. And let's also remember that this is a government that seems to have forgotten where the South Island is in this country. When we look at their transport plan around their roads of national party significance, not much happening down there. This is just another blow for those mainlanders.
Craig, commenter here in the chat gave us this bit of information yesterday. Within the industry says he knows. As he said yesterday, you wouldn't, thank you for the super chat, $600 extra per container for non-rail enabled ferries. Who pays that? Yep, us, the consumers. It's honestly a joke. Your reaction to that? Anything else you want to add?
Well, certainly we're going to pay more if we are ending up double handling the cargo. We also pay more because the turnaround times for the ferries will take longer, around 3 hours turnaround, rather than a much shorter turnaround for a rail.
Right.
What concerns me more was actually something that was sort of slightly underplayed during the press conference, which was there's a statement: the government has not taken any decision on private sector involvement, but is open to proposals that involve private sector capital or expertise, which is code for, under a Section 4A agreement, they can sell up to 49% of the company to a private firm. If they're doing that, we're all going to pay more because we're going to pay somebody profit. We're going to pay somebody a nice fat line of return as a consequence. Now, that seems very likely to add further costs and add much more complexity to a problem that's already complex, that already has lots of actors in it. So while we're doing that, can you remember during the last election when the now Prime Minister promised that there were going to be no more asset sales? We weren't interested in asset sales to pay for tax cuts. But here we are, and we're now potentially selling up to 49% of the firm because the way we've established it allows exactly that to happen. And that's likely to add more costs to consumers, not just the cost of not doing the ferries right now.
I wonder if we look back at those statements, which is how they often get around it, saying this term, we said no more asset sales this term, because obviously this is 2029. That's going to be almost the end of a second term, should they still be there. Chewie, sir, comments or questions?
There's so much that they're pushing to the side or hiding under cups and thinking that we're not going to notice it. Like, they're not going to tell us how much extra, like as Craig pointed out, how much extra time. And the adage is time is money, right? The turnaround on these ferries, the double handling of containers and that sort of thing. I saw an estimate. Where is it? $150 a container, $7.8 million a year as an estimate. They're not telling us how much the cancellation fees are, because that's commercially sensitive. That could be fucking anything. Extra shunting costs, the money that they've already paid, the money that is going to be spread out over the potential 30 years. What about the lost productivity the moment that one of these boats breaks down? And I guess the productivity loss of every minister that's involved in this cornucopia of shit fuckery, as they dive and cover their own ass and will turn to the people that work on these boats, as they have done before, and gone, it's their fault. They're lazy. They don't maintain the ships. They're just trade unionists, because that seems to be a go-to for this government as well. So let's blame the guys that are trying to maintain these ships at the end of their lives in one of the most challenging bits of water on the planet.
It's interesting, Chewie, then you said productivity there. Of course, you kind of hinted at this before, but to spell it out, remember the changing of the speed limits outside schools. They want to do that to help New Zealand's productivity. And there was research that was done that said it would save like a 3-minute journey between Auckland and Wellington or something. So if they're trying to increase productivity of New Zealanders by changing the speed out time primary schools, but as you've said, Craig, there's an additional 2 hours turnaround time. There's the hypocrisy. Carl, you're kind of our industry guy here. What do you want to leave the people with? Is there anything you want to make sure that everyone knows about and what we need to know to hold this government to account?
Oh, just guess, again, we've already touched on it today, but I just want to reach out to the crew again to make sure, and Chewie summed it up really well there. Just say again, this is a monumental stuff up. I don't want to use Chewie's words, but I should.
Oh, please.
Any other, if this happened in my industry where I'm a wharfie, used to be a wharfie, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'd be investigated, I'd be dragged away for a drug and alcohol test if I made a mistake, a monumental mistake like this. And then I'd be sacked for it. So if it's good enough for blue collar workers, it's good enough for Willis, because this is absolutely terrible. And for some reason, I know we're all doing the best we can, but New Zealand, blue collar New Zealanders are having a problem cottoning on to this. What this, the real grasp what this is all, what's really happened here. And I was just saying today to the guys, and maybe we need Craig's help, but we need to get those finance figures out there and really tear those apart, because again, if we look back at the interview today, they're terrified about those figures getting out there. So we need to get out a real simplistic, follow this A, B, C, D, and there's the figure at the bottom there, and that's what it's costing you. And this government has the cheek to go on about money. So yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, and the thing I thought today was they're going to try and spark this up as it's costing less than it would have under Labor, but that's because they're not going to include the costs that they're now forcing onto the ports. I guarantee you, if they added up all of the costs, forget who pays them, but the costs of this, the break fee, the ferries and the ports, it's going to be more money for less product. They're going to end up paying a Ferrari price for a Toyota Corolla rather than the other way around. Tangi, from a political point of view, looking across at these people, what have we missed out on? What do people need to know?
Well, it is really disheartening. And, the reality is that we've been waiting for 1 year since Nicola Willis made that captain's call to basically cancel the contract. And actually, last week with Kiwi Rail in Scrutiny Week, we only found out that the contract had actually been cancelled last week publicly. They said that. And they also confirmed that the negotiations for the cancellation costs will go well into next year. So whilst we continue to wait, for that, the ka-ching, the cost to the taxpayer will continue to rise. They've also had to engage a specialist maritime lawyer who's based in the UK to, assist with negotiations. Goodness knows who else is assisting with negotiations. The figures that are being bandied around are nowhere near the actual cost that this is going to end up costing the taxpayer at the end of the day. That's what Kiwis need to know, is that Nicola Willis and this government have cancelled the contract. Already the costs are continuing to mount. They're going to have to wait longer. There's no guarantee when the ferries are actually going to be here. They like to say 2029, but that's all dependent on the procurement process. They're going to be smaller ferries. They're likely to be, well, they won't be rail enabled. And that's going to have huge implications for people, whether you're in the North Island or the South Island.
But probably, unfortunately, more so for the south and the north, Tangi. I mean, probably, because it's more of a line south than north. Craig, I want to do the same for you, give you a chance to share from a kind of economist point of view, but also working with the union. But one thing I do want to ask you particularly, we keep hearing Nicola Willis saying it'll be far less. It'll be far less than what Labour would have spent. Now, I'm a very simple man. If you offer me $1 million house for let me work this out. Rather than paying $1 million, rather than paying $10 million for a house, if I paid $9 million and got half the property, then it's actually, I would have paid a bit more and got, do you know what I'm saying? It's like you can pay far less. If you pay 2/3 of what it was, but you only get half the product, then that's a bad deal. Is this what we're going to have to wait to find out, that we've paid 2/3 as much according to them, but only got half the product?
And the honest answer, Pat, is that we absolutely have no idea at all.
Yeah.
We have, on an apples for apples basis, we've taken 2 ferries that cost $551 million. And we now have 2 ferries that will be smaller, not rail enabled, will not have the hybrid technology that the two ferries that were previously going to have, and will not be able to use hydrogen with the 2 previous ferries were going to have. We have no idea how much they'll cost, but it's likely much more. And then we'll have to add on the cost, as Carl has quite rightly said, of the cancellation of the 2 ferries previously on top. So because we have to pay handsomely to not own the 2 ferries that we previously were going to own. So all in all, it's likely to be at least double the cost of the original contract. And that's before we get into the port infrastructure. That's before we get into what we as economists like to talk about, the loss of time value. So if the new ferries were coming in 2026, there's all that productivity gain and all of that extra trade that could have been done because there were larger ferries that were rail enabled, moving goods and services more quickly between the 2 islands. Now the new ferries coming in 2029, all of that loss is a real loss to the economy. It's lost jobs, it's lost output, it's lost productivity. So we lose twice as a consequence. And the thing that really worries me, because I'm very sad, because I really like a budget, is making decisions now which will push the cost beyond the next budget year. What that means is the next budget won't have any numbers in for the ferries. That will make it look artificial if the numbers are better than they really are, because we still haven't made a decision about what, where, and how we're going to buy some new ferries. So all of this is still to be done. And to be frank, there is a future government somewhere, likely that's going to have to clean up the mess that's in front of us. And we're going to look back at this essentially as a huge lost period of time and a huge lost opportunity to deliver the ferries that we all wanted to see.
We had Chewie on Thursday night, and I made Chewie promise that if he's the next Prime Minister or a Prime Minister when these ferries come in, to hold a public competition for their name. So we can name one of them the Christopher Luxon and the other one the Nicola Willis. So then every time we're on one of those ferries, realising it's a piece of shit compared to what it would have been, we are reminded who got them. Just before we wrap this up and say goodbye to Carl, Craig, one more thing about money. I'm hearing a number bandied around today of $4 billion. First time I've heard it bandied around. Now, they say it's in a 2023 report fine. But my sense is they had no clue about that number until they found a hole, because if they knew about $4 billion when they cancelled the ferries, they would have said $4 billion. They didn't. They said $3 billion over and over and over again. Today, they're saying $4 billion. Is this believable, or have they just luckily found a little number in column 47D of an article that came out, in 2023, and they're bringing it to the case now because they weren't talking about it when they cancelled them?
I mean, the politics is politics, Pat. They will take whatever large number is in front of them and say, it could be this. That happens to be true. It could also be a lot smaller, but they're not going to say that. So we don't know. The number $4 billion is associated with a projection, assuming that costs continue to escalate. We have no idea whether the costs would have escalated. We have no idea whether or not the $4 billion is a realistic number. What I can tell you is that we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to cancel the contract as it is right now. That's we found that out last week, as Carl quite rightly said. But what I can tell you is that it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars in lost output and productivity waiting for new ferries to turn up. All of this has to be added against the potential cost of just doing the work that was in front of us in the first place.
Yeah.
So, in any good cost benefit analysis, it isn't just as simple as saying it's very big, let's not do it. It's what's the alternative? And if the alternative is more expensive or worse, you should do the thing that's in front of you.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Carl, we're going to leave you now. We talk about a couple of other things, but as I said, as our resident expert tonight, as the person closest to the outworkings of these ferries, is there anything you want to leave us with? Anything we've missed out?
No, it's all been covered as far as I can hear and see. So just thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I think, Craig, honestly, if you could do some work on the numbers, your credibility and your standing in the public arena with those figures would go down really well and be really
one of the many benefits, Carl, of CTU membership is that you pay my wages. So I'll be delighted to help.
All right, Carl. All the best, Carl, with your fight. We'll do what we can from this side, and we'll talk to you sometime soon, eh?
Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All the best,
Cheers.
Carl, as the National Secretary of the Maritime Union of New Zealand.